See, my uncles also operate grocery stores, liquor stores, mini marts, and so on. That whole generation followed a pretty simple formula. You put your heads down, make your money, send your kids to good schools. See, what that actually meant was, put your heads down and don't think about why this formula works out for you but doesn't always work out for everyone else. Why liquor stores like yours are on every corner, but fresh produce and after-school programs are pretty hard to come by. And definitely don't consider a centuries-long history in this nation that includes slavery, legalized segregation, a made-up war on drugs, criminalization of black and brown bodies, immunity for police officers when they commit crimes, and that's just to name a few.
Like it wasn't just this evil demonic force that came up from the pits of and all of a sudden no one knew what to do. I think one of the most ironic things about the way that American exceptionalism tells a story of itself is how there was always these forces that were fought against in order for America to reign true. But those forces that were fought against, other than the British Empire, those forces fought against were natives. Those forces fought against were slave rebellions. Those forces fought against were, the civil rights movement. People like Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, them being driven to a point of assassination. Leaders within certain types of communities who were able to organize being strategically shut down. The United States indeed has always fought against basically the revolt for freedom.
And in the meantime, we got all our music, culture, fashion, sports heroes from a community of people without ever having to reckon with the fact that we have been complicit in the violence against their very existence all along.
I mean, the way this country was founded basically was on the speculation of land that was taken through war from natives, and then that land was worked through entrepreneurs of the time who were slave owners who would come in and work the land, make a profit, and thus the United States expanded ever westward in the South and so on and so forth.
We kept our heads down, now the joke's on us. We abandoned our homelands and everything we knew to escape poverty, to escape violent conditions, to escape systemic oppression. And this whole time, we remained silent while we watched those very same things happen to a group of people who are just slightly different from ourselves.
That's why, again, it's always funny, even when they talk about the Civil War, how the right wing will try to say things like, we fought to end slavery. Like, yeah, a war was fought against a country that seceded from the United States because they wanted to keep the institution of slavery intact so bad. Like it wasn't just this evil demonic force that came up from the pits of all of a sudden no one knew what to do and they had no choice. In fact, the Washington Post, they recently put out a very in-depth article that showed that 1,700 Congresspeople at one time were slave owners. Because again, slavery was the engine of the United States. It's what kept the colonies glued together because it was the center of the economy. It was the automation of the day. It was free labor. You didn't have to pay them. You know what I'm saying? So people were cashing out, speculating on the land, working and cashing out like we just went over. But again, it's always funny to talk about slavery as if it was something that was fought against. The United States prevailed above it. No, the United States was made off of slavery, and eventually a war was fought and it ended. But that's the United States.
Weren't those the same idiots that thought leeches were the cure to pneumonia?
The founding fathers were dumb as shit. Why do we keep using them as a benchmarker for what we should do as a society today?
We're talking about traditions and the founding fathers. And as the young men said, some of them don't stand up. Leeches? Probably not the best medicine. Although with today's healthcare, some people, that might be the only coverage they have.
These folks didn't have plumbing or toothpaste back then. They smelled like ass and onions, and you want me to listen to them on what my right should be?
Smell like ass and onions? I like that powerful argument. Then he kind of glossed over that his rights wouldn't be too great. Listen, the founding fathers had some great ideas. The problem was application, because the application was only to white males. Hear that, originalists? Clarence Thomas, Amy Barrett? It wouldn't have fared too well back in the day.
We didn't know fetal alcohol syndrome was a thing till like the 70s. So women could just drink while pregnant for like forever. If I'm not mistaken, fetal alcohol syndrome can like damage your brain, right?
Now, this is a young black man speaking up. So can we say back in the days of the founding fathers, this wouldn't have happened at all? By the way, he recorded a video. He recorded a video. Now think back to the days of the founding fathers. Think back to the days of the 1700s or whatever. They persecuted and prosecuted people for magic. For magic. Do you know how much we do today that would be considered magic? We carry around devices that allow us to talk to people who aren't in the room. That's magic. Got a stake. Gonna burn you. We have machines that fly. Are you kidding me? We control the flow of water. There's so many things we do just every day that would be magic back then. A black man recording a video in the days of the founding fathers, we'd have had a different Bill of Rights, wouldn't we?
And honestly, same thing goes for a lot of old school thinking. You want everybody to behave in a manner similar to the 50s, a time when everything had lead in it, so most people had brain damage.
I kind of like how this young man jumped from the days of the founding fathers to the 1950s. That's glossing over a lot. That's a hell of a jump, but you know what? He's not wrong. The 50s, once again, or maybe I should say still, not a great time for anyone but white males. If you were black in the 50s, you had to deal with segregation. You had to deal with a subservience built into society. You had horrible jobs, etc., etc. If you were a woman, even a white woman, you were definitely treated second class. Misogyny was rampant. You were expected to be barefoot and pregnant and keep your mouth shut. He did point out a couple of things that went on in the 50s that were pretty prevalent. Kids were eating lead-based painted toys. That couldn't have been good, right? Not even for white kids. Then you had mom drinking and smoking during pregnancy. It was normal back then. Cigarettes were encouraged. They told you cigarettes were good for you back in the 50s. As for minorities, I always say, listen, black people had it bad. Latino people didn't even exist. I think the only Latino we had in the 50s was Ricky, what was Ricky's name? Ricky Ricardo. How could I forget? We only had one and I forgot his name. I should be ashamed.
That's two methods of widespread brain damage that were very common back then. They were out here doing Kaioken multipliers of brain damage, and you want me to live by their f***ing values.
Now, I want to be clear about this because they're always saying that you progressives hate America, and I don't hate America. I love America. And the founding fathers, it was a different time. There was slavery. It was horrible. And there were a lot of other things that were horrible. But they had some great ideas within the Bill of Rights. Things like freedom of speech and freedom of religion. But I don't think they said freedom of speech with no responsibility. I don't think they meant freedom of religion to persecute and discriminate against others. It was a great idea. It still is. The right to bear arms for a well-regulated militia. We didn't have a military back then. That's why they said you needed a gun so they could call you up to fight when it was necessary. We kind of have an army right now, actually a really good one, and a Navy, and the Marines, and the Air Force. We even got Space Force to fight fantasy fights. But you don't need to take your AK to the grocery store. That's not what the founding fathers meant. When they talked about cruel and unusual punishment, maybe they didn't mean for the cops to be beating people and shooting people in the streets. And when it talked about states' rights, listen, they had a great idea to decide states' rights. A Supreme Court, but not a politicized right or left-wing Supreme Court, an actual Supreme Court that would be a balance of powers. Remember? 3 different divisions, executive, legislative, and judicial. The judicial keeping an eye on the other 2. That was a great idea. That's what they wanted. It's not what we got.